Financial peer pressure is often subtle, which makes it the perfect soil for the notion of financial perfection to thrive. Hello, 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 and welcome to More Than Money, a podcast where we have nuanced conversations about money, business, and life, where we take the time to explore the human side of money because success with money is never just about the numbers. I'm your host, Jacquette Timmons, and I am really, really glad that you are joining me today. So, whether this is your very first episode or one of many, welcome. And before we dive into today's episode, I have an invitation for you. Let's explore how I can help you make this quarter one of your most successful, profitable, and not broke. And when I say not broke, yes, I mean not broke financially, but I also mean not broke creatively or energetically. When I say successful, I mean successful however it is that you define that on your own terms. And when I say profitable, I mean that you have more than enough. Again, how you define that, but more than enough money, enough time, and enough space. So, like, imagine what would it feel like if working together would help you to discover a financial breakthrough, particularly one you didn't even know that you needed? Or what would it feel like to know that you are making the absolute best possible choices that you can, given where you are, where you want to be, and your current set of circumstances? What would it feel like to, well, feel confident about how you are making decisions about the thing that impacts almost every aspect of your life and business? I would love to help you create those feelings. And I have three, yes, three coaching spots available to begin this month for a 6-month engagement. So send me a DM if you'd like to see if working together would be a good fit for you. So send me a DM on Instagram with the word coaching, and you will be sent a link to schedule a complimentary discovery call. And we'll take it from there. In the meantime, let's get into today's show. I'm going to take you back a couple of weeks. The prompt was, tell me about a time when you felt or when you dealt with peer pressure. And it was asked during a retreat, a mastermind retreat that was hosted by my speaking and performance coach, Mike Ganino. And you have heard me gush about him before, most recently in episode 220. And the first thing that I wrote on my sticky note was not buying an apartment or a house. And given how central buying a home with the white picket fence is to the narrative around the American dream, this was a really unconventional decision for me to make. So where I live, let's be real, the equivalent of that would either be a brownstone or an apartment, i.e. a condo or a cooperative. But the messaging around home ownership is very clear and it's very loud. And it is considered to be a major pathway to building personal wealth. It is viewed as a symbol of stability and security. And it is often associated with a certain level of financial success, financial status, and financial achievement. Yet, there I was, intentionally bucking this trend. And at the height of the no money down frenzy of 2005, no less. I have a very vivid memory of a moment in a particular apartment that I visited one Saturday. I'm with my friend Carlton, who is a developer, and he generously went with me to visit every place that I contemplated putting a bid on. And so while he is, over in one part of the living room speaking with the agent, asking about boilers and rooftops, which is why he's there, because I would never think to ask questions about boilers and rooftops, I'm noticing that I've kind of tuned out. And I've tuned out because I realize that I'm walking around the apartment in sort of a daze. And I'm walking around the third apartment that day. And I am realizing that for the third time, I am having a very similar thought. And that thought is my current apartment wouldn't fit here. Not my beloved, cherry wood antique dining room furniture, which was a table with, a leaf that would expand when I'm having larger dinner parties or hosting the holidays. And, it had 6 chairs, or the break front, which some people call a china cabinet that came with, or the sideboard of the buffet. Like, none of that would fit in that space. And even if you just brought the table, it would be hard pressed to even fit a, nice sized couch in there. So that's running through my head. And this dining room set, if you're like, well, why is it like, what's the big deal about it? It is very meaningful to me because it was like the very first purchase that I made that made me feel like such a grown up. And like I said, I hosted Thanksgiving and other holidays. I've hosted dinner parties. I celebrated birthdays. So in other words, it was quite meaningful to me. So that's the thought that's going through my head as I'm standing in the living room. And I also can remember the layout of the apartment. So then I walk through the kitchen, and then the bathroom is there, and I'm standing at the doorway of the bedroom. And then I'm thinking, my armoire wouldn't fit in here. The armoire that has been a part of my childhood, like, it has just always been in my family since I was a child. I can recall it being and we only moved 3 times, but I can remember it being everywhere we lived. Again, meaningful. And as all of this is happening, I remember silently asking myself, why am I doing this? Why am I looking at these places that, yeah, I'm looking at them because they are in the price range that I think I can afford. But then there's the reality that they can't fit my current apartment. So why am I doing this? Is it because the majority of my friends were buying apartments and whole ass brownstones and I felt like I was missing out? Is it because I literally had someone say to me, and I quote, I would not hire you because you don't own property, end quote. And yes, if you're wondering, that did sting. So, ouch. But it also made me wonder, how many other prospects felt the same? You're having a very casual, because you typically have more than one conversation, right? So you have a very casual conversation around where you live. And then, you mention that, not even thinking about it in an unguarded way. You mention, oh, yeah, I rent. And then actually, that is something that people are, quote unquote, holding against you. I'll never know the answer to that. But in my book, Financial Intimacy, I referenced the famous quote from Soren Kierkegaard that says, quote, life can only be understood backwards, but it must be lived forwards, end quote. And I share that quote because back then, I did not recognize my feelings about this experience of looking at these apartments and contemplating buying one as peer pressure, let alone as financial peer pressure. And in hindsight, it is as clear as day. And here is something else that I can now see more clearly. And that is just how deeply intertwined is the relationship between financial peer pressure and the pursuit of financial perfection. Financial peer pressure can rear its head and show up in a variety of ways. The phenomenon of keeping up with the Joneses is one. And this is, when you are spending and investing your money to be in alignment with what you see others doing. It can also show up as lifestyle creep, right? This might look like upgrading your lifestyle every single time your income increases, but to the point where you never actually save or invest any portion of your increase. It could look like making spending and investing decisions that are influenced by the fear of missing out on experiences or opportunities in which others are partaking. It can also look like succumbing to the expectations of others by extending the capacity of your resources or reserves to match what they are doing or what they expect you to be able to do. And this can be explicit or implicit. And, that kind of pressure could be coming from your family, your close circle of friends, or even your colleagues. It can also look like maybe you feel inadequate, and you're feeling inadequate because your financial reality and, lifestyle doesn't compare in the way that you would like with what you see showcased on social media or what you even had in your mind as to what would be your reality. I say all of this because the thing about financial peer pressure is that it is often subtle, which makes it the perfect soil for the notion of financial perfection to thrive. The thing, though, about financial perfection is that it is often an illusion that is rooted in an idea that there is an ideal, flawless way to manage your money where everything is perfectly optimized, where no mistakes are made, and all of the financial goals are met seamlessly without any interruptions. Now, of course, intellectually, you and I know that this is unrealistic because not even nature is perfect. It too has to adapt to the context and circumstances of its changing environment. And yet, we don't typically extend a similar grace to ourselves. So, for example, how often have you found yourself thinking, if I do everything right, if I save enough, if I invest wisely, if I avoid debt, then I'll be financially secure always? Overlooking how unpredictable life and business are, how things like market volatility, a job loss, a downturn in business, unexpected expenses, or even I shouldn't say just, but, or a personal crisis can derail even the best plans. What about this question? How often do you minimize the progress that you are making toward your goals because you're not getting quote unquote there as fast as you would like or as quickly as those that are around you? I often have to remind myself that progress involves flexibility, adaptability, and resilience. Perfection does not. And I have to remind myself of that as a recovering perfectionist. So I really need that reminder to myself about this. But here's another question. How often do you feel ashamed or inadequate because you are comparing yourself to an idealized version of financial success, or you're comparing yourself to others and you just feel like you are falling short? All of those questions were a primer because now it is your turn. The question that was posed to me, I now pose to you. Tell me about a time when you dealt with peer pressure, and how did this show up for you when it comes to your money, particularly as it relates to how financial perfectionism revealed itself. And from what I've shared herein, you can probably tell what my answer to the question of, is there an ideal, flawless way to manage your money is? But I am still curious to know your answer. What do you think? So tell me. And lastly, what keeps you grounded when you realize financial peer pressure and financial perfection have you in a grip? I really do want to know your answer to both of those. And if you would prefer not to share it openly on social media, then send me a direct message on Instagram, or at the very least, write it down for your eyes only so you can just get it out, right? Um, but as I begin to close out, I just want to, remind you that yes, at the time, it is true that I did not recognize my experience of going to these open houses for an apartment as peer pressure, let alone financial peer pressure. But I am extremely grateful for my inherent stubbornness and tendency to question my motivations and intentions, because that is what helped me to go from not feeling confident in my choice to not follow the crowd and to go from being too attached to what others thought about me and about my choices to feeling good about my so-called unconventional decision. And by the way, this before and after in terms of that swing of not feeling confident to confident and not being attached to people's, feelings and thoughts about my choices to keeping that at a distance, that is always being tested. So that is an ongoing process. It is not one and done. I just want to put that out there. I am also grateful, though, for the fact that I was clear about what it was and what it is that I want money to do for me, which is why I always tell people vision before how to's. This is why I encourage people to do the financial wheel exercise framework, because it is all about connecting or reconnecting with your financial vision. And sure, I may not always know how exactly I am going to get from point A to point B, but I really do endeavor to never let the vision that I have for my money get too blurry. And plus, I actively have to be in a position where I am pushing back on this idea that there is such a thing as financial perfection, that there is such a thing as there is only one way to do something and somebody else's way is quote unquote the right way. And in fact, I believe that promulgating this idea of financial perfection and there's only one way, there's only one size fits all, has actually done more harm than good to us all. Well, that is a wrap for today, folks. As always, thank you so much for listening and maybe even watching if you are joining us on YouTube. If you like what you have heard and you would like to show appreciation for this podcast overall, or perhaps this particular episode, please do me a favor and share it. Because when you share it with those in your circle, it helps us to reach more people than we could on our own. And if you happen to be listening on Apple Podcasts, please take a moment and hit that little star and go on ahead and leave a 5-star rating, but also take a moment and write a review when we do read them. But the combination of ratings and reviews really helps us with the algorithm so that we can be found by more people that are searching for podcasts around the intersection of money, business, and life. And of course, if you are on YouTube, please take a moment to comment below. And as always, if you'd like to buy me a coffee, here's how you can do that. buymeacoffee.com/Jaquette. buymeacoffee.com/Jaquette. Thanks again for listening or watching, as the case may be. I will be back with another episode. I hope that you will too. And until then, remember, it's about more than money.